Welcome everybody to Real Psychology. Today we are talking about beliefs. How do we change them and why is it so hard to do it in the first place? Why are we all struggling to change to a new belief when we have so much evidence proving that belief? When it almost seems obvious, but yet logically we know it's true, but then we fail to apply it. We fail to believe this belief that we're trying to acquire, and it looks like we're being irrational or emotional. So we're going to get into that today, and we're going to explain why that's not actually what's happening. So there's this appearance that we're being irrational, there's this appearance that we're being emotional, but that's only because we have a bad understanding of what beliefs are in the first place. So we're going to discuss all of this today, but first we're going to look at why are beliefs important? Why do we care about beliefs in the first place? Well, I would argue that beliefs are in fact most of psychology. If we take something like self-esteem, for example, self-esteem is a belief system problem. So if you can't change your beliefs about yourself, you can't change your self-esteem. Like, your self-esteem is, I'm either a cool person, I have value as a person, or I don't have value, I'm worth less than others. All of those are beliefs. So an inability to change those beliefs is effectively an inability to change your self-esteem. Self-esteem isn't the only part of psychology, but it's a big part of psychology. Now, other examples might be certain psychological complexes, so psychological issues that you have that are due to false beliefs you have about the world. So you might believe, like I have a friend, for example, who thinks that people are always out to get him. Like they see something different in him, and they're always throwing jabs and insults, and they just don't like him, right? Now that's a complex he has, and it's also a problem, and furthermore, it's a belief system problem. So that problem is only due to what he believes. Like, if we can change what he believes, we can change how he sees the world, and we can get rid of that problem. So being able to change beliefs is therefore one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, in all of psychology. And that's not an overstatement. So trust me, you're going to want to know how to change your beliefs. Now, assuming you're here, it's probably because you're struggling to do so. And I was the same. I was struggling to change beliefs, specifically about self-esteem is just one example, but about other things as well. And I was left thinking that I was being irrational and emotional. I thought that I logically knew what was true, but another part of me, an irrational part of me, an emotional part of me, wouldn't accept the reality. So that's kind of like, if you're in that situation, that's not very good, because if your mind isn't listening to reason and evidence and logic, there's basically nothing you can do about it. So what ends up happening is people resort to methods like doing daily affirmations or changing their thought patterns. These methods might work for some people, but if I'm being honest, they're probably one of the worst ways you can go about changing your beliefs. Like, it's really inefficient and really ineffective, and you're gonna see why as we explain what a belief is in this video. This is probably one of the only videos on the internet that actually says what a belief is and goes into depth. So this video covers how to change to a new belief in the fastest and easiest way possible. Great, let's jump right into it. So first, we're going to want to know, what is a belief? What are we dealing with here? Well, a belief is what you use to interpret the world. A belief tells you what is happening, and it tells you what will happen. So it's predictive. It tells us what's happening right now and what's going to happen in the future. So therefore, a belief is an understanding of how something works in the world. It's an understanding. It's giving you the mechanics, the physics of how something is happening in the world and how it's likely to unfold. So it's really just an understanding. That's what a belief is. And this is a vital point to keep in mind, because if you miss this point, you're going to miss the entire point of the video. This whole video is about the idea that beliefs are understandings. They're the same as an understanding of algebra or economics or how to drive or operate a forklift machine, as we'll see in a moment. So let's actually look at one example of a belief system, two different belief systems, one that you have and one that your friend has in the office. So say one day you're in the office, a coworker comes over to you and your friend, he says something, he makes a remark, you interpret that remark as an insult, but your friend, he interprets it as a joke. Okay, what just happened here? How is it possible that both you guys heard the exact same thing, yet each person has a different understanding of what just happened? Well, I mean, the answer is actually pretty simple. Your belief about what happened is different because you have a different understanding of what happened. Your belief about that remark has some understanding, like there's some mechanics that you're using to interpret that remark. And your friend's mechanics are different to your mechanics. And this results in different interpretations. You think that guy said one thing and he thinks he said another. This is because beliefs are just understandings of what's happening. They're your way of knowing or finding out what's happening and what might happen in the future. And they're subjective. Different people have different beliefs, as you already know. And the key point here is that it's an understanding. So, like, the only way you can know what's happening is to somehow understand it. Like, you can't get an interpretation of something. Like, I can't say, oh, he said an insult, unless I have an understanding of what an insult is and what drives insults and why he might say an insult in the first place. So there's lots of understanding behind that interpretation. So, again, the key point here, beliefs are an understanding. They're an understanding of how something works. It's just what you think is happening. It's how you think the cogs are turning. So, beliefs are understandings of the world. Beliefs are the exact same as an understanding of algebra, economics, or how to operate a forklift machine. There's literally no difference. Like, we have this bias that beliefs are different. If I believe that something exists or doesn't exist, or I believe that something works a certain way, that's not the same as algebra. That's not the same as economics. That's not the same as a forklift machine and operating it. We think that they're different. The reality is, and this is probably what causes 90 to 95% of the problems when it comes to belief system change, is not understanding this fact. Beliefs are not different. They're the exact same. I can't stress that enough. You can't get an interpretation of something without having an understanding. So it is an understanding. There's literally no difference. Your belief about whatever it is in the world, whether it's your friend said an insult or that you have low or high self-esteem, that's an understanding. And if you fail to understand that fact, you're going to really struggle to change your beliefs. So, you will struggle to internalize and incorporate beliefs, i.e. believe them, the exact same way you will struggle with algebra or learning to operate the forklift machine. It's not going to be any different. So, the same way you struggle in class when you're learning algebra, you're going to struggle the exact same way with a belief. Now, you might think this is weird, but that's because you don't have a good understanding of what beliefs are. It's not weird if you think that they are understandings, and they really are. So this, like, the classroom analogy is a really good one because we've all been in the classroom, I hope, and we've all been, we understand how that works. So anytime you're unsure about changing beliefs, you can always refer to the classroom, because that's where you developed a lot of your understandings and you saw all the problems that came along with it. And yeah, so a belief has a theory component and a practical component, just like concepts in the classroom, because beliefs, once again, are understandings. So your understanding of how economics works has a theory element. So there's the theory that, the teacher might explain first, and then there's going to apply it. So there's going and doing the problems or the questions that the teacher gives you, right? And then sometimes you think you understand the theory, and then you go to apply it and you fail. Now, does that mean that you don't believe in economics or you don't believe in the theory? Well, no, obviously it doesn't mean that. It just means you're failing to go from theory to practice, or basically you have a bad understanding. Your understanding is too weak to actually apply it, to actually practice it. So now we're going to take a look at some examples of learning in the classroom, and then after that we can go ahead and see how this all relates back to changing your beliefs. So it's your first day learning algebra. The teacher explains the concept to you. You go and you do the first equation, fine. You do the second one, fine as well. You get to the third, why is there a negative sign here? What just happened? Well, it's pretty simple. You had the theory, you thought you understood it, but you failed to actually apply it. So your understanding wasn't actually strong enough to actually apply it to the third equation. Like, your understanding was only good enough for the first two, but it was too weak for the third one. So you'd need to deepen your understanding. You'd need to maybe ask more questions or get more information to be able to solve that third, maybe more complex equation. Okay, great. So now let's look at, say you're learning to operate a forklift machine. The forklift instructor explains what all the buttons and pedals do. You get on and you start operating fine. 1 minute later, you're stuck. Wait, is this the button that goes back, or is it this one? Again, what just happened? You failed to go from theory to practice. That is, you have a bad understanding. As in, your understanding was good enough for the first minute, it let you drive it forward, but then when you wanted to go backwards, you weren't sure. Because your understanding is very shallow, it's very weak, it's not very strong. So, and this is, again, a problem of going from theory to practice. Now, why did I just show you those two examples of algebra and learning to operate a forklift machine? Well, that's because you're going to have the same problem when you're trying to believe something. When you're trying to internalize and incorporate a new belief, you're going to have the same problem you do with the forklift machine. And again, I know this is unintuitive. You wouldn't expect it, but we know for a fact that beliefs are understandings. How else, what else could they be? If it tells you what's happening and what's going to happen, it's without a doubt an understanding. There's no other way about it. If you want any hope of changing to a new belief, you have to change your understanding. Okay, and there's really no other way to go about it. It's, I would say, impossible to do it any other way. So again, that's why I'm bringing up these examples, because you're going to see the parallels, you're going to see the similarities when you're trying to change your self-esteem. You're going to notice similarities to learning to operate a forklift machine. And I know that's kind of funny, you wouldn't expect it, but yes, it's going to be the same struggle. So, how do we change beliefs? Here's the best part. Here's the fun part. We now know that beliefs are the exact same of understandings of how something works. For example, a forklift machine. So, failing to understand is failing to believe. There's literally no difference. There's absolutely no difference. If you can't understand a certain situation, you can't believe. You can't use that belief. If you don't have a good understanding of whatever belief it is, if it's self-esteem, if you don't have a good understanding of your self-esteem, of who you are, you're not going to be able to use that belief. It's going to be useless, because failing to understand is failing to believe. And again, does this sound weird? Yes, it probably does, but that's because you don't realize that beliefs are understandings. They're not any different. You could use the words interchangeably and there'd be no difference. You could swap understand for believe and believe for understand anytime you want, and it wouldn't make a difference. They're the exact same thing. And again, that's the key point you need to take away from this video. Your belief is an understanding. That's it. So, okay, let's see. To change your belief, you need to change your understanding of whatever you want to believe in. Okay, great, makes sense. So, if I have some old belief that, say, I'm not a cool person, I don't have value as an individual, then I need to change my understanding about myself to start believing that I do have value. The belief that I have value, the belief that I'm respectable, the belief that people will like me, that's an understanding. It's an understanding like any other. It's the exact same. So, you're going to face the same problems when changing beliefs as you faced in the classroom. Here's another point. The exact same. So, you might have some theory about how you should have high self-esteem. Okay, you might have the theory, right? So you have all of this. I have a good job. I'm well educated. All my friends like me. So you're gonna have that theory, right? But then when you go to apply it, that is, actually feeling good about yourself, you might fail the same way you do in the classroom. So in the classroom, the teacher tells you theory. They give you they tell you, look, when you divide one side of the equation, divide the other. You're like, okay, sounds pretty simple. You go to apply it, what happens? You fail. So this exact same thing is going to happen when you're changing beliefs. And there's really no way of getting around it. It's going to happen because beliefs are understandings. They're concepts of how the world works. So if that's the case, then we're going to struggle in the exact same ways we do in the classroom. And again, that's why it's very important to keep the classroom in mind. Because anytime you're trying to change one of your beliefs, you're not sure what's happening, you're not sure why you're not able to change, you might actually, remember the classroom, and then that might help you get through that change. That'll enlighten you. It'll show you what you might be doing wrong in terms of going about that change. Woo! Okay, so problem zero counter. I think we'll skip this for now. Let's go look at a practical example of belief change. So we talked about what beliefs are. Now let's look at an example of changing your belief. And the example we're going to look at here is our self-image, how we see ourselves. And so basically your self-esteem. So this is like even a personal example. I can tell you what I did and how it all worked out. So first I'll tell you what happened first when I tried change. So I have low self-esteem. I'm like, okay, great. What can I do about this? I want to change my belief about myself. So I'm going to make a list of all the great characteristics that I have. So I went and made a list of all my great characteristics. I'm really short. I'm not that smart. So I made a list of all of these things, and I looked at it, I read it, and I was like, okay, great. Why do I still feel the exact same? What's happening here? So what I thought was happening, and what you probably thought was happening if you tried something similar, was that my mind was being irrational. It's just being stubborn. It doesn't actually listen to logic. So what was the solution? Well, at first, I thought there is no solution, but eventually I realized that, my belief about my self-image is an understanding, so I'm going to get a good understanding of who I am as a person. So if my self-esteem is an understanding, just like an understanding of economics, let me get a good understanding and see what happens then. And that's what I did. So instead of just having like a list of like, oh, 6 or 7 positive traits I like about myself, I went into great detail. I listed all my positive traits, all my negative traits. I listed the traits of all the people I know. I looked at their lives closely. I looked at all my values. I looked at what I consider a good life lived, a bad life lived. I basically like left no stone unturned. So what I did here essentially was get a very good understanding, the key word here is understanding, of who I am and who I am relative to other people. So if I want to be sure that I'm the exact same as everyone else and that I shouldn't have low self-esteem, I need to know that I'm actually the same. And the only way you're actually going to know you're the same is by getting a very good, very detailed understanding of who you are. Like the list I had at the start that wasn't working was, it's very like, it's not thought out. It's not expanded. It doesn't have a lot of depth. It doesn't have a lot of weight. It doesn't have a lot of gravity. And the reason is, it's not very complicated. It's the exact same as having a shallow understanding of something. It's the exact same as having like, I kind of understand it. I kind of understand that I'm the same as everyone else, but I'm not actually sure. And the reason you're not actually sure is because you haven't looked at it closely enough. You haven't gotten a really deep understanding of how you're the same. Like a list of 6 or 7 items isn't going to do it. It's not going to cut it. The reason is, that's not a very good understanding. Like until you've looked at exactly who you are and exactly who everyone else is, you don't really know who you are relative to them. You don't know if you are actually, in fact, the same as everyone else. So the solution was looking at myself way more closely. Like not just, oh, I have nice hair, that isn't deep enough of an understanding of who I actually am. So even something like, let's take an example of, oh, my friends like me. I mean, that's great, but what would be way better would be an example of each one of my friends liking me. So I might look at every single one of my friends and list them out and look at all the nice things they've ever done for me. And then you can just keep going. You can just keep expanding it. Like you can go from a one sentence, my friends like me, to, oh, my friend John once, bought me that thing for my birthday, or my friend Jack once helped me in this really tough time. And that's much more, it has a lot more depth, and it gives you a much deeper understanding of your friends liking you. It's a much more complicated, intricate, and just a much more clear picture of your friends liking you. Like saying my friends like me it doesn't have a lot of gravity to it. And one thing you're gonna realize is, like, the reason this list didn't work, just the positive traits, is because of the fact that it's actually not that convincing. Like, it's not that your mind is being irrational. It's really like a list of 7 sentences isn't actually that convincing. And a list of 7 sentences probably wouldn't convince you of many things in the world. Like, there's not very many things that with just 7 really short sentences would actually fully convince you of. So anything else, when you're being convinced of it, you usually have to think about it a lot more thoroughly. You have to go through it in detail. And that's what I did when it came to self-esteem, and that's what I did that actually worked. So I got a very good understanding of exactly who I am and exactly who everyone else is, because then I could see how I actually was the same and how there actually wasn't anything wrong with me in relation to other people. Like, once you've looked at it in that much detail, you can realize, oh, I actually am similar to everyone else. Like, this is actual proof. I've looked at like every one of my traits and every one of the traits of the people I know and the average person, and now I really know who I am. I have a very good understanding of what a human being is and who I am in relation to human beings. So, woo! I know that's a lot, but I hope that was clear. Let's see. Okay, so a general method for changing beliefs. I would recommend, first off, you list all of your evidence. So it would just be, it would be that list that we started off with when it came to self-esteem. But so you make that list, whatever. So there's a belief, you're still not convinced of it. You want to be convinced. You make your list, and then after you make that list, you want to expand on everything in the list. You want to give everything in the list way more depth. You want to think it through. You want to give it more detail. You want to get rid of vagueness and ambiguity. So whatever is on the list, like again, my friends like me, that's not as good as very concrete examples of your friends actually liking you. Like a list of every single time, not every single time, but a long list of every time a long list of times your friends were nice to you. Not every time, maybe every time if you want extra evidence. But yeah, so that's what I do. And then maybe I have a good job. Say that I have a good job is on the list. So then I would look at exactly what job I have, and then what jobs do other people have. Like, I have a good job is great, but it pales in comparison to exactly listing your job and looking at everyone else's job, because then you really know if you have a good job or not. Like, you can see your job in relation to everyone else. So you get a deeper understanding of how your job is truly a good job. And then that piece of evidence becomes a lot more convincing, and it just gains way more weight. So yeah, so that's what I do. I'd list my evidence, and then I'd expand as much as possible. If you have enough evidence, then and you still don't believe whatever belief system it is, the problem is you haven't expanded on it. And this is what I've found consistently with any belief system. Assuming you have enough evidence in the first place, because sometimes you don't, your problem is you haven't taught it through. It's just a few sentences, or there has to be depth. There has to be clarity. Like, again, your belief is an understanding of how the world works. So if you don't have depth, and you don't have expansion, and you don't have intricacy, then you're not going to be able to actually apply it in your day-to-day life. Like, you're not going to be able to apply, I have a good job and my friends like me, to your day-to-day life. It's just too, it's too short. It's too light. So, you made your list. You went through everything on your list, and you expanded every item, and then maybe you just expanded the expanded items, and then, you expand it as much as you can, as much as you need to, until you feel like you have a really good understanding, a really good grip of it. And then you try apply it in the situation you want to apply it. So self-esteem, you're probably going to be applying everywhere, in basically wherever you go in life. And then if you actually feel different, if you try to apply this new understanding to the world, you're like, oh no, I actually do deserve respect, or oh no, people will like me. So you're going to try apply that, and if it works, well, great. You did it. Congratulations. But if it doesn't work, then you're going to need to go back and expand your understanding more. Now, one problem that might occur is you don't have enough evidence in the first place. Now, with something like self-esteem, I think you do have enough evidence. Because the evidence is right in front of you. The evidence that you're not very different from other people is there. You just need to go through all of it. You just need to expand on it. But in other scenarios, what might happen is you don't have enough evidence in the first place. Like, I know a lot of people in the community of trying to get confidence, right? So the self-confidence community, and they would think that they had enough evidence for these beliefs that they want to have, but the reality was they never did. Like, but what they'll tell you is, oh, look, I have enough evidence for this belief, but the reason I don't believe it is because my mind is being irrational or emotional. No, the reality is, and I realized this with a few of my own beliefs, is that I never had enough evidence in the first place. Like, the evidence wasn't even convincing enough in the first place, which is, like, trust me, if you don't have enough evidence, you're not going to be convinced. It doesn't work. Like, you're not going to hack your mind and convince yourself of something ridiculous. Like, an example I give is, if I told you now that birds don't use wings to fly, would you believe me? No, you wouldn't. And could I ever convince you that birds don't use wings to fly? I mean, maybe, but probably not. The chances of me actually ever convincing you, no matter how many times I tried and how many different methods I tried, of that birds don't use wings to fly, is near zero. It's just not going to happen. So, not having enough evidence, if you don't have enough evidence for a belief and you're wondering why you don't believe it, don't be surprised. You need to have enough evidence. Now, a lot of the time in psychology, it's not an evidence problem. It can be sometimes, but a lot of the times it's just you haven't expanded and gotten a good understanding of the evidence. You haven't treated it like an understanding, and you haven't studied it properly. You haven't gone through it properly. That's the main problem you're going to encounter. So, if you fail, if you do all of this, you go through, you think about it for hours, you expand on it as much as possible, and it still fails, your problem is either not enough evidence, or you didn't expand on the evidence enough. You didn't make it clear enough. You didn't get a good enough understanding. So, important things to remember if you take anything from this video. Number one has to be, without a doubt, you need to take this. Beliefs are understandings of the world. They're the exact same. They're the exact same as an understanding of algebra, the exact same as an understanding of economics, and the exact same, if not more the exact same, if it's even possible, of an understanding of how to drive a forklift machine. Okay, number two, your mind is never being irrational or emotional or illogical. The reason you don't believe whatever it is you want to believe is because you haven't convinced your mind properly. You haven't convinced yourself properly. That's another thing I noticed, that you're not convincing your mind, you're convincing yourself. But at times it can seem like, oh, your mind isn't listening. No, you just haven't convinced yourself. Like, the reason you can't use that belief is because you can't understand what's happening. You can't use that understanding, or you just don't have enough evidence. Like, there's certain things you're never going to believe because there's not enough evidence. So, anyway, you'll face the same problems. Point number three, you'll face the same problem when changing beliefs as you face in the classroom. Again, very invaluable, very good to remember. If beliefs are understandings, then you're going to have the same problems you did in the classroom. So always go back, visit your local classroom, because it's going to be very beneficial. Now, finally, there's only two reasons you don't believe something. Number one, you don't have enough evidence in the first place. Don't expect to believe that birds don't use wings to fly. Maybe you'll manage it. I highly doubt it. I know people in the business community, and I don't have a lot of knowledge on this, but I know certain people who do say affirmations that say, and they say in the affirmations, they're like, I will be successful, I will make money, I will, it's something along those lines. Basically, they do affirmations so that they can keep the confidence that they're going to be able to make millions or billions in the future, or thousands, or whatever it is, right? So my theory on why they have to do that is because they don't have enough evidence in the first place. Like, the reason they're struggling so much to believe this and have to do affirmations and change your thoughts every day and make lists is because it's hard to prove unequivocally, like without a doubt, that you will make money. It's not easy to prove that. So unsurprisingly, your brain doesn't believe it. They don't believe it. So that's a problem you're going to face, not having enough evidence. Although most of the time, again, the reason, like in self-esteem, the reason isn't not having enough evidence. It's just you haven't expanded on the evidence. You haven't gotten a deep understanding of the evidence. You haven't gone through it in detail. You haven't looked at exactly who you are, exactly who other people are, what values are, how to live, all of this stuff. You just have some, like, a list, a bad list like I did, a short list of like 10 things, and now you want to feel great about yourself. Won't work. So that's the second reason. If you're wondering why you still have low self-esteem or haven't believed that thing that you've been trying for years, and I struggled for years not knowing any of this, not realizing that beliefs are understandings, and I struggled for years, I kid you not, like just, oh my God, thinking, oh, my mind is being irrational, it's being emotional, thinking I need to get like more experience to prove the belief. No, I didn't need to get more experience. I just needed to get a better understanding. So, I think we'll leave it there, guys. I'm going to make way more videos on beliefs and the problems you encounter when changing the... There's a whole slide here that we didn't go through. I don't think it's important to go through now. There's something called the smooth interpretation problem. I'm going to make a whole video on that. So, yeah, I think I'll leave it there, guys. Like I said, many more videos to come. If you like the video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. Many more videos like this to come. Radical, highly effective psychology videos. Very effective, very radical. And I think we'll leave it there. Thank you so much, guys. I'll see you next time.